Good evening. My name is Bethany Costello, and I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Community Partnerships here at RISD. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the 2024 MLK Series celebration, an evening of art and justice. We're going to begin in just a couple of minutes, but I need to do a couple of housekeeping things with you. At this time, we ask that you silence all of your phones and mobile devices. Live captions are available via the link on the screen. If you are having trouble accessing the browser during the program, please raise your hand and one of our event coordinators will assist you. In the event of an emergency, please take a moment to locate the exit nearest you. The accessible exit is to your left behind the stage. David Carry-On Bradley, Vice President for Social Equity and Inclusion, will formally begin tonight's program in just a few minutes. Thank you.
Good evening. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is David Carrion Bradley. My pronouns are he and they, and I serve as RISD's Vice President for Social Equity and Inclusion. I would like to welcome you to an evening of art and justice, which is part of RISD's 2024 MLK celebration. Before we begin, I'd like to have us start with something called a land acknowledgement. This is a practice of opening a gathering of people with an acknowledgement of the history of the lands that we occupy. Acknowledgement is a simple and powerful way of showing respect and a step towards correcting the narratives and practices that erase Indigenous peoples' history and culture, and it is a way of inviting and honoring truth. Rhode Island School of Design is built on what is now called College Hill, part of the ancestral lands of the Narragansett Indian tribe. Indigenous people from many tribes, near and far, live, study, and work in Providence today. The amplification of Native voices and histories is crucial to rectifying the many violent legacies of colonialism, and we gratefully acknowledge the ongoing critical contributions of Indigenous people across our state, region, and nation. I encourage each of us to learn about the Indigenous communities and histories in our locations and to form meaningful connections with the descendants of the lands of whose land we occupy. Land is sacred. Today we honor the ancestors of this land, their lives, their legacies, and their descendants, including the many generations of people who remain here today. Narragansett tribal member Lindsay Montanari, who is featured on the We're Still Here mural across the river from where we are tonight, was standing on this stage just a few months ago, and she shared her own land acknowledgement. In it, she noted that Roger Williams claims that he bought this land not with money, but with love. But, she wondered, how could he buy land from people who did not believe that land could be bought? Please join me in a moment of reflection on this history, recognizing that many of us are here because of the sacrifices forced upon Indigenous people by genocide and settler colonialism. A land acknowledgement by itself is a small gesture. It becomes meaningful when coupled with authentic relationships, informed action, and intentional social equity and inclusion work. This is an important part of the work of RISD and the work that all of us in the RISD community do together. That is why I am honored and I have heartfelt joy to welcome you here today. In celebration of the life, legacy, and profound impact of one of the most influential activists in the fight for social equity, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King's unwavering commitment to social equity and justice has not only left an indelible mark on American history, but continues to inspire generations across the world. His vision of the world remains a guiding light, one that remains imperative today, perhaps more than ever. As we come together in this space of learning and community and creativity, we acknowledge the importance of reflecting on Dr. King's teachings. At RISD, we understand the power of creativity, innovation, and the arts as agents for social change. Dr. King's principles align with our values, reminding us of the responsibilities we hold as artists, designers, creators, educators, and thinkers to use our talents to foster inclusivity, empathy, and understanding within our communities and beyond. I joined RISD's community only 6 months ago, so I'm still learning about the institution and its people. Yet even in this short amount of time, I've seen the principles of Dr. King's teachings manifest themselves in myriad ways at RISD. For example, this fall, a cohort of graduate students enrolled in RISD's Illustration MFA program were encouraged to explore how they could use their art to affect the world in a positive way. Through a course called Social Engagement and Agency, which is co-taught by Professors Eric Telfort, Andrea Dejoux, and Dylan DeWitt, the students were challenged to explore new ways of creating while working directly with local community organizations and individuals to become socially engaged artists. Their projects ranged from partnering with a grassroots organization that was founded and staffed by Filipino workers and labor trafficking survivors who empower Filipino migrants working in the US, all the way to working with a local refugee resettlement center that assists Syrian refugees with learning English, gaining citizenship, and community building. This course is just one example of the social equity work at RISD. Tonight, we'll hear from our panel on art and justice about many more ways that Dr. King's principles have been manifest at RISD and in the world of art and design more broadly. Following the panel, we will hear the principles of Dr. King's teaching reflected in song by the Prism of Praise Community Gospel Choir. Before our panel and concert begin, I'd like to welcome President Williams to the stage to share a few welcoming remarks. Crystal?
Good evening. Welcome to the 12th Annual MLK Celebration at RISD, an evening of art and justice. It's wonderful to be here with you, RISD students, staff, faculty, our guests from Brown and other neighboring institutions and the greater Providence community, as we honor the life and enduring contributions of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. I'm also pleased to extend my warm greetings to our distinguished panelists, Gabrielle Bullock, Walter Cruz, and Salamishah Tillet. Our wonderful moderators, Naima Petney, Schiller Family Assistant Professor in Race and Art and Design, and Assistant Professor of Literary Arts and Studies, and Njari Anderson, a member of the class of 2024 in Sculpture, a RISD Brown dual degree candidate. I also want to thank the members of the Prism of Praise Community Gospel Choir who will be performing for us today. We're thrilled to have all of you here as part of the 2024 celebration. And I want to take a moment just to thank the President's Office, the staff in the President's Office, and the Division of Social Equity and Inclusion for their hard work in planning and implementing this year's MLK celebration, including tonight's event. Thank you, everyone, for your hard work in making this come to fruition. So most of us know Dr. King for his powerful writings, speeches, and actions that call us to think, act, and speak in a love-centered way. He deeply believed that approach to engagement is what leads to personal, cultural, and societal transformation. What we don't often discuss, however, is the fact that Dr. King and his colleagues were masterful strategists who wove concepts of nonviolent civil disobedience with changes to the law and with the arts to change hearts and minds, yes, and behavior in service of the creation of what King called the beloved community, a community based on shared values of mutual aid and cooperation, the recognition of interdependence and shared responsibility. In his thinking, this philosophy could inspire revolutionary movements and foster a more just and equitable world. As a strategy, it offered many seen and unseen ways for individuals to make necessary, essential, and meaningful impact. Indeed, Dr. King's belief that our existence is predicated upon mutuality and interdependence fueled his faith in a dream that this world indeed holds the possibility for all of us to thrive. Community, for Dr. King, is the platform through which shared understandings and identities take shape. And this belief compelled him to forge relationships and collaborations across unlikely entities. Dr. King often strategically leveraged the popularity, innovation, and influence of artists to engage and inspire people to work towards social change during the civil rights movement. He was keenly aware of the power of art and the power of artists to help transform the world, as are we here at RISD. Joan Baez first heard Dr. King speak as a teenager, and later she, along with artists and performers such as Harry Belafonte, Bob Dylan, Nina Simone, Paul Newman, Diane Carroll, Sidney Poitier, and others, joined the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom in solidarity. In 1970, Toni Morrison published a novel centering young Black girlhood, an appeal to the world to feel the pain of being seen as less than because of the color of your skin. In the 80s, in response to the US government's apathy towards the growing death toll from AIDS, artists joined with activists to help create ACT UP, the AIDS coalition to unleash power. And in the 90s, 2000s, aughts, and now, artist after artist engage in the work of imagining and narrating and making a world free of tyranny, free of oppression, and a world fuller, more full of justice and peace. And as we continue today to grapple with feelings of pain and despair as witnesses to so many injustices in the world, artists like Kendrick Lamar, Ava DuVernay, Sweet Honey in the Rock, and on remind us to have hope, to engage, that it's gonna be all right, that together we can overcome. It is in this spirit that we convene each year for RISD's MLK event series to highlight the role of art, the role of design, and creative endeavors in advancing justice and democracy. We are honored to acknowledge the individuals and collectives whose commitment to justice in service of the greater human endeavor have had an indelible impact on our lives and communities. Today's featured guests demonstrate a consistency in their values and convictions related to justice that embodies Dr. King's example as a model for lasting change. As Dr. King wrote in his last published essay, A Testament of Hope, our challenge is to organize the power we already have in our midst. May we all have the courage to do our part in our unique and essential ways. May we have the courage to adopt new strategies for new times, and may we commit to working collectively towards justice and towards lovingness. Now, I'd like to invite Vice President for Social Equity and Inclusion, David Carrion Bradley, back to the podium to share more about our esteemed guests for the evening. Thank you and welcome to RISD.
Thank you, President Williams. Obviously, the panel has joined me on stage, and I am going to share some kind words of introduction about them in just a moment. But first, I want to echo President Williams' words of gratitude, thanking the staff who helped to bring this year's MLK celebration to life. There were many people, many offices, and I'm actually going to say the names of the offices because most of them never get to sort of live in the limelight and be recognized for their work. So just bear with me for one moment. But the offices that helped to put this together include the Campus Conference and Events Services Office, the Center for Community Partnerships, Custodial and Ground Services, Dining and Catering, Facilities Operations, Marketing and Communications, Media Resources, Procurement Services, Public Safety, Res Life, the President's Office, and the Division of Social Equity and Inclusion. And this is the problem with naming names, is you're probably going to forget somebody. So if I did, please forgive me. I appreciate all the work that you did. I want to name 3 staff members particularly: Mia Nilo, Social Equity and Inclusion Administrative Assistant and Project Specialist; Alicia Luson, Social Equity and Inclusion Partner in Human Resources, and Tony Johnson, Associate Dean for Student Social Equity and Inclusion. Tony has been an integral part of the MLK celebration at RISD since its inception, and you'll actually get a chance to hear from Tony later tonight in more than one way. So, now, it's time to introduce the members of our panel on art and justice. Our panel, starting over on my left, is being co-facilitated by Naima Petani, who is a Black feminist scholar, dancer, go ahead and clap, it's okay, and abolitionist educator. She is an assistant professor of literary arts and studies at RISD and holds the Schiller Family Assistant Professorship in Race in Art and Design. She writes toward expansive experimental notions of Blackness, haunting, coloniality, and movement. Her current research projects center contemporary Black performance, practices of remembrance, and questions of inheritance. Dr. Petani holds a BA in Women's Studies and Sociology from Vassar College and a PhD in Feminist Studies from the Department of Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies at the University of Minnesota. Naima and I were actually both at Vassar at the same time, although our paths didn't cross. Fortunately, after I came to RISD, I had the chance to sit in on her decolonial teaching and action course, which is actually a course she instructs for other faculty at RISD. And I got to see firsthand what an amazing educator she is, and I'm delighted that she will be guiding our panel discussion tonight. Next to Naima is our first panelist, Gabrielle Bullock, who serves on the RISD Board of Trustees and works as a principal and director of global diversity at Perkins & Will, where she oversees the Justice, Equity, Inclusion, and Diversity program. She is regularly sought out around the world for her leadership and expertise in issues of social equity in architecture. She has led numerous complex and high-profile projects, most recently Destination Crenshaw, which I think we'll hear a little bit about tonight. Although the panel is totally spontaneous. We didn't plan anything ahead of time, right? She graduated in 1984 from RISD with degrees in fine arts and architecture, becoming the second African-American woman to earn an architecture degree at RISD. Gabrielle and I first met in Los Angeles, which is where I happened to be when I accepted the role of vice president here at RISD. And within a few minutes, I could tell that she was an ardent and no-nonsense supporter of social equity and inclusion. And the fact that she serves on the RISD Board of Trustees was the sign that told me that I had made the right decision in accepting the job. So I'm grateful to have her not only as a partner in this work, but also on our panel tonight. In the middle is our second panelist, Walter Cruz, who is a New York City-born creative, exploring the intersections of art, design, and architecture through the lens of his Dominican-American upbringing. His work aims to understand how Black and brown bodies activate and inhabit space. His work has been exhibited at venues including the Museum of the City of New York, the Center for Political Graphics in Los Angeles, Syracuse University, and Longwood Gallery in the Bronx. And he recently had a solo exhibition at Swivel Gallery in Brooklyn. As a visual designer for the Black Alliance for Just Immigration, he brings an artistic eye to social justice issues. He also co-founded Zeal, a Black artist-owned cooperative uplifting multidisciplinary Black talent. He holds a BA in Architectural Studies from Hobart and William Smith Colleges and an MFA from Maryland Institute College of Art. Naima actually recommended Walter to serve on the panel, and as soon as I had a chance to learn more about him and his work, I said, yes, that is exactly who we need on this panel. I hope and I feel like the RISD faculty and students in particular are going to be excited to hear from a working artist who really is applying principles of social equity and inclusion to their work. So thank you for joining us, Walter. Next to Walter is our final panelist, Salamishah Tillet. She is the Henry Rutgers Professor of Africana Studies and Creative Writing at Rutgers University, Newark, and the 2022 Pulitzer Prize-winning contributing critic at large at the New York Times. She is a You can snap. That's pretty cool.
Yes.
She is a prolific author, and she is the director of Express Newark, a center for socially engaged art and design at Rutgers. In 2003, she and her sister founded A Long Walk Home, a nonprofit that empowers young people to use art to end violence against girls and women. Dr. Tillet earned a BA in English and Africana Studies from University of Pennsylvania, an MA in teaching from our neighbor up the street, Brown, and an MA in English and American Literature and PhD in History of American Civilization from Harvard, our neighbor even further up the street. In 2023, she received an honorary doctorate of fine art from Moore College of Art and Design. President Williams actually recommended Salamishah for tonight's panel. I have to admit, I wasn't previously familiar with your writing, but no lie. The very next day after you accepted being on the panel, I went online, saw your New York Times article about Beyonce, and in it, Salamishah says, the film Renaissance critiques how race, gender, and genre have limited our ability to see Beyonce's talent, and by doing so, liberates her from ever having to prove her singular impact on American culture. That's when I knew that President Williams was right, and that we had an amazing panelist on our hands. Our second panel co-facilitator and our last person on stage today is Najari Anderson, who is a Brown RISD dual degree program student studying sculpture at RISD and modern culture and media at Brown University. In his work, he investigates sites of cultural exploitation intrinsic to Black daily life. He is interested in Blackness and all the spaces in which Blackness is consumed. Most recently, his work has explored what it means to be Black and chronically online. Of all the people on the stage tonight, I was actually the most nervous about inviting Najari to join the panel, which might seem surprising given the immense amount of talent and experience of our other panelists. But to me, Najari is a little bit of a celebrity. When I was preparing for my interview here at RISD, I actually had read the article about him recently winning the Dorner Prize, so I already knew his name. And then the first time I went to the Gelman Gallery, which is in the RISD Museum, out of all of the pieces in the museum, his iron and copper sculpture, which is called Gully Queen, moved me the most deeply and actually still haunts me to this day. I think about it a lot. So suffice it to say, with Najari and all of our panelists, we have an amazing panel in store for you tonight. They will share with us their thoughts on the intersection of art and justice, how they see the legacy of Dr. King resonating in this space, and maybe share a little bit of advice that they have for the artists and designers in the RISD community today. Please join me in welcoming our panelists.
All right, everyone's mics are on. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. It's a pleasure to share space with you all. Art and justice is our theme, the two words we're kind of thinking through today. And just to kind of ground us in the conversation, I'd love it if you all could each speak to what the word justice means, what it embodies for you, for your work, for your practice.
So I'll start. Some think of justice as a noun. I think of it as an action word, and to really tear down the barriers that prevent everyone from having a fulfilled and dignified life due to access to resources, et cetera. And I have to come up with this sort of very descriptive definition for the 2,500 people in the firm who would like to see it as a noun, as a thing that somebody else does. And so in my line of work, in architecture and design, really justice to me is challenging the status quo.
I'll go next. Like Gabrielle, I think of justice as a verb. It's not a word that I actually use a lot. As we were thinking about, or as I was thinking about today, other words that I use more often are like healing, love, freedom. And so for me, I think justice is a precondition for freedom, right? Like that you have to be engaged in the act of whether it's a redistribution of resources, whether it's the sharing of wealth, whether it's the sharing of knowledge. That's all of justice work. in order to free yourself and free others, right? And so I think for me, just having this conversation about what does it mean to be free? What does it mean to free yourself and free others in that process? And then what does freedom really look like? What does freedom sound like? What does freedom feel like? Is a lot of what my work is obsessed with. So I just want to, I guess, to confirm and to reiterate this idea that justice is movement. It's moving and it's working in collectives and coalitions with other people in order to achieve freedom.
We're going to keep that going. I love history. So for me, justice really means making sure that I'm learning about those people and those names that are often overlooked by history, or their accomplishments are detached from their names. So it's important for me when I think about justice to lift those names up and bring them to this space, right? So when we're thinking about people like Nelson Mandela, we also speak about Winnie. And we talk about her labor before, during, and after his incarceration. When we speak about people like Dr. Gladys West, who helped with mathematicians create GPS that we use in our cars every day, we use in our smartphones. And even when we speak about Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, when we speak about Coretta Scott King, right? And her labor and work towards anti-poverty efforts during the civil rights movement. So I always think about history and how do we lift those names into the spaces that we enter.
Wow. I want to expand upon those definitions of justice that you guys just provided us in terms of, you know, 3 specific words like action, healing, and history. So I'm really curious, you know, the rich body of work that you've developed based around like art and justice. Specifically, I'm going to start with you, Salamishah. You know, like how this definition, how art justice also engages your public art practice. Because you've made public art in several cities, and most recently, you curated an outdoor exhibition in Washington, D.C. that features work about democracy and public memory. So, you know, I'm curious, particularly, like how these projects function for you all, like as like a manifestation of justice, your specific definition of justice.
Yeah, thank you. So I had the good fortune and honor of co-curating with Paul Farber of Monument Lab the first exhibition on the National Mall ever, right? So this summer, and it was from August to September, and it was aligned with the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington. And we asked 6 artists and anyone who came to the mall during that time a simple but heavy question related to history. So what stories remain untold on the National Mall? And what's important about the National Mall is 2 things. One, it's the most traveled to public park in the country. And then within the mall, it's the Lincoln Memorial is the most traveled to site on the mall. And so it's a place that's rich with lots of history. It's a public space that was made to, in many ways, enshrine the version that we see, the long version, that's imbued with all of American history around the Civil War, around slavery, around freedom, indigenous histories, all are kind of there on the subterranean and not always raised to the level of the surface. So we asked 6 artists this question, and they responded in really radically different ways. What I love about public art is, and why I'm kind of really into it as a curator and as an administrator, is because Black bodies, women's bodies, queer bodies are so vulnerable in public space. And so to be able to create art that both reflects those experiences and is made by those people is a radical intervention, right? In how we think about safety, how we think about safe spaces, how we think about free spaces. So that's just on the most basic level. To create public art is a radical intervention. To see yourself in public art is an even more radical experience. And so I'll just highlight 3 different works of art that were on the mall that stand out of the 6. But they all were magical and magnificent. One, we had Vanessa German, who's known for assemblage, do a hyper-modern sculpture of Marian Anderson, right? And so when you see her sculpture, it's next to Lincoln, but it's also in conversation with Lincoln. And she uses mirrors, and she uses photographs of people who were there that day when Marian Anderson performed at the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in 1939 in the first racially integrated concert in Washington, D.C. Another piece is Derek Adams's playground called America's Playground, D.C. And what he did is he made a livable, usable playground And he took a photograph of the first desegregated playground in Washington, D.C. as the spine of it, right? So you're telling this history of segregation, of the optimism of the civil rights movement, but you're also making a space where children, in particular, but everyone, could find themselves in the National Mall. And then there's another work of art by Wendy Red Star, and it was a fingerprint made out of glass, and the base was granite. And if you're not, most people don't know this part of the mall, but there's a place called where the Constitution, the signers of the Declarations, their names are. So she does this magical, magnificent sculpture, and inside the ridges of the fingerprint are the name of Crow leaders who had signed land treaties from throughout the 19th century. So you have this history of indigenous dispossession next to this story of America's founding. And so that to me is like the power of public art, that you can kind of tell the very messy, difficult parts of American history. You can see yourself in it, you can see others, and then in that moment we're reimagining what America is, but we're also retelling the story as it was on this huge landscape of the National Mall. So I guess just public art allows new voices, allows different people to see themselves, and it can create communities and collectives in which people who oftentimes who don't feel safe, can feel safe for that moment.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, Walter, you are also someone who's been creating intentionally free spaces, right, to pick up on what you were talking about for Black people, right, for Black artists. And I would love if you could share with us a bit about the work with Zeal, which is decidedly a Black cooperative business, which I think is a really important piece to highlight for everyone, for Black interdisciplinary artists. What does that work like? What does it feel like to create that container? What for you has been kind of emergent and sacred about that space?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, but before that, I think, again, adding to this idea of history is that Black cooperatives have a long legacy in this country, right? We can go back to the civil rights movement with the Freedom Quilting Bee, right? This is this cooperative that was created by poor Black women craftsmen to support poor Black women craftsmen, right, during that time. So with Zeal, we're also trying to make sure that we're adding to this legacy, right? We're not in this arrogant phase of we're creating this new thing, but more, where can we learn and where can we add to? Because creating a cooperative is a messy thing. You know, it's hard to own something and make sure it stays above water, right? It's much easier to go to work and leave and not worry about it again, right? So it's also the willingness to be a part of this thing. And that's looked like many different things over the past few years that we've been developing this cooperative. We've created a studio residency out in LA, in Inglewood, to make sure that Black artists have space. You know, one of the things we did was just go out and ask people, what do you need?
Yep.
And more often than not, they said we need physical space. So we figured out a way to provide physical space. They also wanted to create ways to facilitate their careers. So we developed an incubator program where we worked with local Black-owned galleries and art professionals to help them develop their networks in that way as well. Yeah, so we're just constantly trying to figure out ways to work with different cooperatives, different folks who are aligned with us. You know, our 4 values are love, grace, joy, and abundance. And how do we move through those things as we make decisions collectively to keep each other above water?
I love that you named the principles that the work is founded on.
Yeah, I think it's important to have that integrity so that when you get stuck or you start getting frustrated, you remember like love, joy, grace, abundance. And especially when you're in the trenches with people day to day, it's good to have those reminders to say, hey, we're actually doing this thing together. We're on the same team. So how do we figure it out?
Gabrielle, you were recently involved with launching a new initiative, Destination Crenshaw, which is a reparative development project in Los Angeles that is the largest Black public art project in the U.S. Can you tell us a bit about your work on the project and specifically like how it relates to your vision of justice? You know, justice as an action, justice as an active choice, right? I think there's, you know, the move to do something, the move to act with justice. You speak to that.
Yep. So Destination Crenshaw is a art and cultural experience in the largest Black community west of the Mississippi in South Los Angeles. This project was in response to the train coming through this community and its major commercial corridor. The community decided this project had to happen. The community decided that enough was enough with the disenfranchisement, and they were concerned that they would lose their community. And so they challenged every status quo. They challenged how you select an architect. They challenged what stories will be told. They decided, they say for us, by us. And so this project, so it's public major art, it's also 2D work. It will be an opportunity for hundreds of artists over time in perpetuity to participate in this. And there's a series of pocket parks and art. President Williams saw the in construction largest park of this 1.2 mile project a couple months ago. And so it is meant to tell unapologetically Black stories. The design of this experience is steeped in the history of this community, migration from Africa, from the Southwest. So far, including the shade structures are designed after the giant stargrass, which comes from the slave ship bedding, right? So it was important that everything from the landscape, the storytelling, the architecture, the urban design, how we named the parks, what stories were going to be told when, were all intertwined with this community's culture, and they decided what stories to be told. And I cannot tell you how barrier breaking it is. We did not have to go by public contracting, selection of artists and architects and contractors, because they knew it was going to bog down the system. There's still more barriers to break. We still cannot get Black contractors because the public contracting policy prevents them from meeting the insurance requirements. So there's a long way to go, but so that's a little, I could be here all night talking about Destination Crenshaw, but it is an example of how action makes progress and makes change, and it has brought me full circle as an architect.
Yeah, and I think there's something really important that, that travels through each one of your practices in terms of the kind of the continued effort that is required to enact the types of justices that you three activate within your practices, right? We talk about the legacy of Dr. King and the kind of continuation of justice to now. You three are living examples of how people are, creating unique and creative opportunities that involve Black folk, right, that involve Black people. And so, I want to thank you for doing that specifically, because it's really important. It's really important work.
And I was really struck, you said it's a 1.3 mile space that is going to be filled with this work. And I don't know LA well, but I know that space is a contentious thing. And to think about something that we think about as being finite and scarce as actually abundant, right, to pick up on the work that Walter's doing. What does it mean for it to take up 1.3 miles?
So it's actually the space that nobody wants. Well, the parking folks want it, right? So it's parking lots, it's vacant land, and so it's the in-between spaces that will help activate, provide shade. So just point of fact, when they moved the Endeavour space shuttle to Los Angeles, they moved it down Crenshaw Boulevard and mowed down every single tree to get it to its home. So this community has been without shade, and LA gets really hot. And so there was a lot this corridor needed other than shade. It needed to reinvigorate the businesses where they were afraid that the train was just going to whiz by. By the way, the train does not stop between this 1.3 miles. So the idea is to create a destination. Come back, come see us. You'll see some things on the train. Get off at the next stop. Backtrack for the community itself. Walk around, see the park, see Kehinde Wiley's piece down at Sankofa Park. So I hope I answered your question. I forgot what it was.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for speaking to that element of it. So of course, right, some of the ideas we're sitting with today around legacy, around inheritance. Walter, I wonder if you could speak a bit about that and thinking about, the life and the achievements of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who have, brought us here today to also think about the legacies that we are working in, the inheritances that we are honoring. however complicated they might be, right? For you, in thinking about legacy and how it grounds in your work and your collaborative building with other Black artists, what resonates most deeply with you with this idea of legacy?
Yeah. Like my big sis, shout out to Carmen Dixon, says, there's a getting where you fit in moment, right? A movement. You don't have to be the next great orator. You don't have to be the next big face of whatever civil rights movement is happening. You know, I would argue a major part of King's legacy is uplifting your community and being of service to it, right? So what are the smaller ways we can take actions to help the people around us? What are the ways we can uplift the folks around us, right? If you're lucky enough to have a space separate from where you live to create work, maybe you can open it up from time to time to different people around you, right? Sometimes you gotta break the rules. I remember when I was in grad school, one of the guards for the printing building, like where we did screen printing and whatnot, we would always have small talks about, he'd be like, hey, I wanna learn how to screen print. So when I would go after class, after weeks, I would help him learn how to screen print. And by the end of the semester, I got him a starter kit so he can start screen printing his own work. Of just like those small things, right? It doesn't have to be recorded, it doesn't have to be shared, just do it because it's the right thing to do. And just keep yourself open to that, right? I think a lot about as our practices grow and we start getting reached out to take on different partnerships and public opportunities, to me, it makes much more sense to go around and knock on the doors of residents of an apartment building and ask them what mural they want to see on the side of their building versus us imposing a vision on those blank spaces, right? How do we co-create with each other around us? And to be mindful, right, that everyone doesn't have time for art, but that doesn't mean you can't meet them where they are, right? We can still have those conversations. So just, to me, I think the big impact are those smaller actions that we can take on every day. That'll add to this legacy of uplifting communities and being of service to the communities that we're a part of.
And could I add one thing to
Absolutely.
that? So on Destination Crenshaw, that we use the community as a design partner, right? We're not telling them what they're gonna get. We are their interpreters. And so I think that, and that goes a long way to help preserve this experience in perpetuity.
Absolutely.
I want to talk a little bit about, the kind of representation of the folks here in space, particularly Gabrielle, because you hold a very kind of pivotal position here within the kind of the architecture of RISD, as you are, an alumnus, and also you sit as a member of the board of trustees, which I think is really important, in particular for the students represented here. You go to the school every day and you wonder if there are people at the table who look like you, who are there advocating for you behind the scenes. And I think, I openly will admit I'm like a huge fan of you in terms of like not only your positionality there, but also in terms of, not only being like one of the first Black architects to leave, to graduate RISD and, go on to do great things, but to also be one of the great, like the first Black women architects, which puts you in a mirror, like in a category, then another subcategory, which is really important just to have that level of representation. But specifically to your role as a member of board and trustees, can you speak to or provide us at least a little bit of insight about, what that looks like for you on a day-to-day, within that role, and how do you navigate, art and justice from that position?
Whoa. I'm not gonna even look at what I was gonna say. I do what I do and always have been because I innately needed to have impact. Mm-hmm. Everything I do, every role I chose to participate in, it's because when I was 12, I wanted to be an architect to improve how my people lived. And I think that's what drives me today. It's extremely gratifying. The only one in the room is real. But I look at it as an opportunity. If you're in the room, you got the spotlight, so use it, right? Mm-hmm. God, I forgot your question.
I for the students specifically, right? I'm curious about, how do you navigate art and justice from your position, and I'm curious in what ways do you think that can also, impact, student life?
Well, I think that in my roles, all of my roles, RISD trustee, director of global diversity, it's to really propel the institution, the firm I work for, forward. Because justice is so important, you know, we don't just talk about diversity and inclusion at the firm. It is justice first, then equity, diversity, and inclusion, because there are so many barriers still today for so many, and architecture and design has such an opportunity to fix that. And that's what excites me about it. And so, again, I don't know if I'm answering your question. I think that this is what I was meant to do. And I don't know how else to parlay my architectural background, my design background, other than to give voice to the voiceless.
Thank you. You did answer my question.
I did? God. The lights are getting hot.
So, Salamishah, so much of your work is so solidly and unapologetically grounded in Black liberation, in love for Black people, in uplifting Black women and girls. So thank you for that work. And given that so many students are grounding their work, their writing, their design work, their ceramics work, right, in questions of justice and wanting to be activists and wanting to work and organize in activist spaces, and yet are very much confronted with industries that are creative, yes, and also deeply commercial, right? What can you offer to students who are traversing the space of wanting to double down on their commitment to justice, to be activists, to have their work be in service of liberation, and who are contending with spending time and wanting to transform fields, right, that are also deeply rooted in systems that we are working to undo in many ways?
Thank you for your question. So I guess I think about this from a lot of different vantage points. So first, you know, I don't believe that any art is apolitical. So when people say art for art's sake, that's a political statement people are making about the lack of kind of progressive politics in which they're engaging in their art, right? So all art is political. It just depends on what your politics are. So that's one thing. Two, I was thinking about the legacy of King, and sometimes, you know, for me, I'm writing this book on Nina Simone, and so the relationship between art and activism, and I always write about artists who are interested in changing the world through their practice. And as a Black artist, I don't think you often have the choice or the luxury to pick and choose whether you can do that or not. But anyway, so with King, I was thinking about, you know, quickly, just for the students in here who are having their own practice. One, you know, King was, there's a Dexter Parsonage Museum in Montgomery, Alabama, has his record player, right? So to think about King as someone not only who grew up in this kind of rich gospel tradition, but who in his private hours with Coretta listened to music as a place of solitude, as meditation and inspiration. It's important for us to think about. To King, you know, President Williams alluded to the March on Washington, but we can think about him rallying and asking Harry Belafonte to organize a concert, the Stars for Freedom concert, for the weary travelers who had marched from Selma to Montgomery. He knew those people were going to be so tired they needed like an all-star lineup. So Leonard Bernstein was there, Tony Bennett was there, Nina Simone was there, Sammy Davis Jr., they finally got him there, right? So the relationship that art and music could be not only embedded in the social movement, but also can be the thing that galvanizes people to pick up and move on the next day. And then the last thing with King I just want to say is that thinking about him in these moments of solitude and rest. So there's a really beautiful photograph of him in Jamaica in a pool in 1967 that becomes the inspiration for a visual artist like Derek Adams or my sister Shahrazad Tillet, often collaborator of mine. They use that image to inspire their work. So I just want to say that King is always part of this conversation about art and activism, even when we're not thinking about him in the same tradition as other artists. And finally, I just want to end with this quote for the students from Toni Morrison, because I always, like, if I can quote Toni Morrison every day, I will. So this is just an example of me quoting her. So she has this quote: "I tell my students, when you get these jobs that you've been so brilliantly trained for, just remember that your real job is that if you are free, you need to free somebody else. If you have some power, then your job is to empower somebody else. This is not just a grab bag candy game." And so I guess this idea of Toni Morrison, this idea that if you are an artist who's in a commercial space or in an activist space, to not always see those things as inseparable, but to see them as highly connected. And then I just think, and maybe we don't want to watch the Emmys or not, but we just saw a record amount of people of color win Emmys for doing pretty progressive work on television. So to think that things aren't commercially viable, that are politically grounded, is kind of a misnomer, and it only reinforces this idea that apolitical art is art, right? So I just want you to think about them together. They can be commercially viable, and also that our goal is to change society and to free ourselves and to free each other. So if that's your benchmark, then just keep on doing that work.
Yeah, just to add to that, I also, thinking about the commercial part of the question, is perhaps not overcomplicating opportunities all the time of maybe someone reaches out to you and you're thinking like, I don't know if I should do this, or how do I figure this thing out? Something I always think about is just asking what's possible, right? So perhaps a company reaches out to you, I'll often be like, this sounds amazing, but how do I create space for community, right? So maybe that looks like a part or the entirety of the proceeds of something goes to a specific community or initiative, right? Especially in these times when we're thinking about arts programming being defunded constantly, how do we help those things out? I think about how do we keep, to your point as well, moving away from scarcity and move towards abundance, right? There's space for all of us. So when we hear about opportunities, pass the mic, right? So like, maybe it's not for you, but it could be for somebody else, you know? I'm always thinking about and constantly in exchange with different creative people around, like literally we'll be texting or calling or emailing each other different opportunities, right? I'm on the heels of finishing a museum fellowship, and one of the things I heard the most was that most opportunities for creatives come from other creatives, speaking their name in spaces when they're not present. So how do we continue to say it's not just about me, but the other folks around me? Exactly, so like you can have both. You can navigate both. You don't have to make that decision or distinction.
Do you want to go to the audience?
I think that's it.
We are running up a little bit on time, folks. But let's take 2 questions. Because we are gathered here with other folks. You all have been soaking in some of the things. I'm sure you all might have questions or even ideas that you just want to pick up on, something that you heard today that moved you in a particular way. We have time for about 2 questions. Questions? We have mics coming around so that everybody can be heard. Okay, there's one over there. And if you just don't mind saying your name into the space as well.
Hello there. My name is Jadobi, and I have a question for the writer. What is your favorite genre to write about?
Oh, that's a great question. It's so hard. The hardest genre for me to write about is probably dance. I'll say the hardest one. My favorite genre, television. For the New York Times, I write about television, theater, and movies. But I was trained as a literary critic, so I don't know. I can write about a lot of different genres, but my favorite ones is probably TV. Actually has shaped how I write my book now, if that makes sense. So maybe it doesn't, but I think serial, like a series, helps me think about chapters. So thank you for that question. Yeah. Maybe we can take them both
Yeah,
just,
we could
and
probably-
answer them. Just
probably
take
do
them
that.
both at the same time.
Okay, do you want to, because yours a follow-up, and then we'll come back to it.
But maybe we can take them both.
Yeah,
and then-
it's both at
and
the
then
same
we-
time?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah,
for
yeah,
time's sake.
Hey, cool. Hey guys, thanks for coming out. I guess I would also good. Thank you. Anyway, this is a follow-up to Jadopi's question. I hope I'm pronouncing it properly. Your response to Jadopi's question, do you have any particular affinity for, or do you find yourself able to review reality television or only scripted television?
Okay.
and we'll take that question as well.
Yeah,
and
we'll
then
take all the
just answer.
questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. My name is James Lee, and unfortunately, I forget your name. Please bear with me. But I had a question about Destination Crenshaw, and the reason why is because I'm familiar with the place in my hometown of Broward County, Destination Sistrunk, and it has some similarities to the current project that you're doing out in California. And I wanted to know if you were familiar with said endeavor, and also pretty much like just give you some background knowledge. So Destination Sistrunk is basically a cultural location that hosts events and activities, and also is like an art installation space, an incubation space that helps the community. And Sistrunk is a predominantly Black and historical community of Broward County, but unfortunately, due to gentrification, that is now being changed, and a lot of the community members are being pushed out. And so, on one portion, I wanted to ask, how do you plan to ensure that this project, Destination Crenshaw, through time and activation and community, doesn't become an area of interest for gentrifiers or communities that may want to push out the initial mission statement of that location as a result of like the difficulties that my community is currently experiencing, but also how do you plan to continue to revitalize the space for years to come? Thank you.
Excellent question. So this is not just about arts and parks, because that just won't work. We had to change the policy, the development policy. So the council member of this district is a huge proponent and actually one of the dreamers of the project, has changed policy for any developer who wants to build anything along this corridor in this community. And so by changing policy, you control the G word. You control gentrification, right? So that's why I say it's not just what architects and landscape architects do. It's who else is a partner in this.
Yeah.
And it has to be from the economic development, from the political side, from the community side, all of it. So, and still at the end of the day, we cross our fingers. Because no matter what we put in place to make sure that this project, this experience belongs to this community, if you don't keep your eyes on the ball, eventually it will go to the highest bidder. So we do this, but we do as much as we can to put policies in place to prevent somebody to take it over, or gentrification, or have it not be supported. And so along with this, there's a whole business plan around who manages this experience moving forward, who keeps the artist rotating program going, and so forth.
And,
But it's sad to hear that.
want to get to-
And I don't write about reality television. I don't. I just don't. But great people do, so.
Is there a reason why?
I mean, on this day of justice and service, I just don't watch a lot of, because I'm doing a lot of different genres, so, yeah. But I tend not to watch too much. No reason, though.
I think we're...
We are so grateful for what y'all have shared with us today. Can we give our panelists a warm round of applause?
Thank you so much, panel and panel facilitators. You all now have to pretend that we're not moving 6 people off the stage and 30 people on the stage and doing a set change. So I'm going to thank the panelists once again and welcome the panel to stage. Thank you. Yeah, we can do it after the concert. Is that okay? Yeah, okay. Thank you. So while we're switching the stage around, I want to thank our panelists once again. That was very inspirational, engaging, enlightening. Actually, oh, it's gone now. But the 4 pillars for the MLK celebration, I feel like, I don't know, the music is making me feel some way. Celebration, learning, inspiration, and service. So we wanted to make sure we were providing as much of that as possible to you during tonight's event. So we probably could have listened to the panelists for another hour, but we wanted to end the evening with some music and some celebration. So today we have with us the Prism of Praise Gospel Choir, which is a multicultural, multi-ethnic, diverse Christian choir directed by Michael Ivora. Prism is an independent community choir, originally founded by Michael in 1991, and they have over 30 active members, ranging in ages from 14 to over 70, including RISD's own Tony Johnson. So I told you that you would see Tony again. The members of Prism seek to join God to be present as God blesses, rescues, heals, and saves. Prism of Praise has ministered in the community in a wide variety of settings over the years, with the goal of spreading God's love, peace, and hope through music and assisting other ministries and organizations in their fundraising endeavors. Their past ministries and benefit concerts have included, the list is very, very long, but some of them include the Adult Correctional Institution, American Red Cross of Rhode Island, the Institute for the Study of Practice of Nonviolence, the Rhode Island Community and Justice, AIDS Care Ocean State, and many more. We are happy, I am happy, because they're on stage now. We are happy to have them back here at RISD as part of this year's MLK celebration. So please join me in welcoming the Prism of Praise Community Gospel Choir.
Good evening. Is that on? Now it's on? Awesome. My name is Michael. It's such an honor and a privilege to be here this evening. I know you came to hear music, and that is what we will give you, but I do want to just say this, that in the 1950s, Martin Luther King was speaking at a weekly meeting of the Montgomery Improvement Association, and he said in his speech this: "Ours is a spiritual movement, dependent on moral and spiritual fortitude. Ours is a spiritual movement." Freedom songs, which became so integrally connected to what we know as the civil rights movement, had their roots in old Negro spirituals and in gospel music, so it's fitting that a gospel choir has been asked to come and to help elevate and remember the legacy and the contributions of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And as we sing, I encourage you to try to contextualize what it is we are doing in this way, that hopefully we will be making a joyful noise, but I also want you to focus on the words. And I want you, as you're listening to the words, to think about what they might have meant to a group of black men and women sitting at a lunch counter in South Carolina being berated and spat upon for simply trying to eat there. I want you to think about what the words that we will sing might have meant to Fannie Lou Hamer, who was beaten in Mississippi within an inch of her life and thrown in jail for doing one thing, trying to exercise her right to vote. I want you to try to contextualize what we will sing and imagine what the words might have meant to Bayard Rustin, without whom we would not have had a March on Washington, but who was eradicated from the pages of history until a movie very recently came out, which I encourage you to see, because he was unabashedly gay. If you can contextualize these words and this music in that frame, I think you will get the most out of what it is we are here to do. We are blessed to be here. The first song we will sing is called Jesus Promised.
we're going to sing a song called Hold On. This song has for me the very nature of deepest suffering, as well as long-term abiding faith in the highest power, who knows all, guides all, and loves all.
Amen.
Mr. James Farley, who was an enslaved human being born to enslaved parents. And he tells us about incidents that he saw when people wanted to sing Right On, King Jesus. When I was a little boy, they would kill us if they caught us in a Sunday school. When they did let us go to church sometimes, they would give you a seat way back here with the white folks in front. Then sometimes they would let you come in the evenings to church, and then you would take the front seats with the patrollers, the patrollers, behind, so that if a preacher said something he should not say, they would stop. One time when they were singing, Ride on, King Jesus, no man can hinder thee, the patrollers told them to stop, or they would show him whether they could be hindered or not. Stop, because we'll show you whether you can be hindered or not. But we haven't stopped. We're not hindered. We are strong. King Jesus rides on.
Getting up morning, isn't that great? When I get to heaven, I'm gonna wear my robe. I'm gonna see him. I'm gonna walk right over.
December of 1955 to December of 1956, you all know what that meant. People who were dependent on a bus for transportation did not take the bus. That meant they walked to work. That meant they walked to the grocery store. That meant they walked to the laundromat. They walked everywhere for over a year in order to desegregate the buses. Now, there's a story, a true story, about a woman named Mother Pollard. Mother Pollard was 72, and she participated in the Montgomery bus boycott, and Martin Luther King said to her, basically in the form of a dispensation, you know, Mother Pollard, it's okay for you to take the bus. You're 72, and for health reasons, we would understand. Her reply, my feet is tired, but my soul is rested. My feet is tired, but my soul is rested. This next song we're going to sing is called No Ways Tired.
time.
Good evening, my fellow creatives. That means I get a response back from you. Hello. So I'm going to try this one more time. Good evening, my fellow creatives. Hey, that sounds good to me. Now, we're going to be singing Jesus is a Rock. And I don't know about you, but Jesus has been my rock. And I'm just going to let you know my name, because we always do that when we say, give our names. My name is Monique. And hey, hello, everybody. And I am an alumna of Rhode Island School of Design. So I don't know what you have and what is going on with you. Make Jesus your rock in a weary land. Jesus is a rock. Can I hear you say rock? Jesus is a rock, rock. In a weary land. Bless the Lord with us. Jesus is a rock in the weary land. Come on now. Come on now,
storm. Jesus is a rock in a weary land, a weary land, a weary land. Jesus is a rock in a weary land, a shepherd in a time of storm.
I would not be a sinner. I tell you the reason why. I'm afraid my Lord might call my name and I wouldn't be ready to die.
I would not be a backslider. I'll tell you the reason why. I'm afraid my Lord might call my name and I wouldn't be ready to die. Jesus is a rock in a weary land, a weary land, a weary land. Jesus is a rock in a weary land, a shelter in a time of storm. He is a rock in a weary land. He is a rock in
I'm Sunita.
Hi, Sunita.
And I think I am so overwhelmed with being here, sharing this space with all of you. When I think about Fix It, I think about young children, and that's what they want. They want you to fix it, right? They don't have the words to say it, and they're screaming, and you just don't know what to do. But they want you to fix it. And I think about courage, and I think about justice, and I think about those being action words. Sorry, I'm a teacher. I think that we want things fixed. We want a quick fix. We know that things don't come quickly that are worth keeping, and we need to keep that action. Silence is the voice of complicity, and there's so much we can do through our art, through our kindness, through our sharing, through our asking questions. We don't have to be in our lane. We can be strong. And I think when I think about my weakest moments, I've asked God to fix it. And He has said, hold on, it's coming. Dr. Martin Luther King said, with love, we can accomplish all things. Hold on, but don't be silent and don't stay in your lane. We're going to fix it. God's going to fix it. He's going to give us the strength to fix it.
Come on, TJ.
So I was asked to just kind of close the program. This will be our last song. Insert aw. But for those of you who don't know, I'm Tony Johnson. I am the Associate Dean for Student Social Equity and Inclusion at the best art and design school in the world, Rhode Island School of Design. And so a part of, and I've been honored to have been with the Martin Luther King series since its beginning. It's been an incredible journey. And part of the reason why this year's event is partially panel and partially choir is because we have a deep commitment to our college to ensure that we are always challenging ourselves and our art practices to stand up for justice, to embed justice and inclusion within our practice, within our work. It is a responsibility as artists and designers to create the kind of world we know that we can have. And as artists and designers, we hold tremendous power. We also realize that in our society and in our world right now, we're just tired. We're weary. Justice work is tiring. And with everything happening in the world, goodness knows, we need a little joy. We need some community. We need some understanding. We need to get back to the basics. And so we endeavor to have moments of inspiration and celebration. That is critical to sustaining yourself in justice work. And so we're honored today to have the Prism of Praise here. The last thing that I will say before we close out is that I was thinking about this the other day. 25 years ago, there were two people in this room here at this same exact week in the calendar year. That is myself as a RISD student and my beautiful wife, Monique Roll Johnson. We met the first day of class, but that's a whole other story. But the first year that we were here, we asked the college, this was back in the 1900s when we were here, we asked the college, what do you do for Martin Luther King? You know, what are you doing? And the answer was, what are you talking about? We don't do anything. We said, what do you mean you don't do anything? He said, yeah, we don't do anything. So as artists and designers, what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to make something happen that isn't happening, right? We see the things that aren't there and we make it. And so a few of us got together and said, let's do something for Martin Luther King. So we put this whole program together and we came right on this stage and we put a call out for voices. Some people sang by note and some people sang by letter. And if you don't want to know what letter is, it's I open my mouth and letter out. So some sang by note, some sang by letter, but we put together this little group and we were looking for a name. And we didn't have a name, and at that time, Take Six was a really big group. How many people remember Take Six? Okay. So Take Six was an incredible group. And we said, well, we need a good name, and Take Six was really big. So we said, okay, well, if they can take six, we can steal 9. So our group was called Stole 9. And we sang right on this stage. And I think about 25 years of justice work and commitment to King. I'm honored to be in this college continuing to do this work. Our last song is Fix It, Jesus. If you have not clapped yet, this is your chance to clap. If you have not patted your feet yet, this is your chance to pat your feet. You can clap on the 1 and the 3, or you can clap on the 2 and the 4. We will have all the beats covered. So please get out of your seat if you are inclined to do that. Gospel music is about moving. It's about shaking your head. It's about shouting back to the choir. So do whatever you need to do in this last song to leave this place with a little bit of joy and inspiration. Our last song is Fix It, Jesus.